I got it. Okay, y'all, we're good. We're good. So, if you are just coming on, welcome, welcome, welcome. My name is Patrice Stokes. I'm your host of Therapy Thursdays with Therapy on the Mic, presented by Inspired on Purpose, which is my business and organization where we are all about helping people to see themselves through a different lens to find healing in their God given purpose using therapy and photography. I am your host of tonight. Now, of course, every Thursday, where we come on Therapy on the Mic and we talk about all things developing gratitude, growth, and healing, and where we also have an opportunity to interview amazing people who are doing the same in their field of work, in the community, and around the world, and learning how we can, as a community, grow and heal together. And so tonight you are in for a treat, as we will be talking about all of those things. In particular, we are going to be focusing on wrapping up the end of Mental Health Awareness Month. And so if you are listening to us on Facebook, on YouTube, you might not be listening to us on the radio station because we had to change some things on there, but you're probably listening to us on Facebook, YouTube, also on my website on Inspired on Purpose services.com. Again, that's www.inspiredonpurposeservices.com. And if you click on podcast plus resources, you can also get on the platform there and join. And of course, this is an opportunity for you to chat with us. So if you are on Facebook, YouTube, or on my website, you can also leave a comment. You can ask questions because tonight's topic is going to be amazing, and it'll be a great opportunity to just plug in, especially if this is the first time that you are listening to anything related to healing and growth, and especially particularly therapy. I am a therapist. I have been licensed in school counseling with my master's in counseling and counseling education for almost 8 years, but I've actually been doing therapy and counseling for over 15 years. And when I say that it has been a blessing to not only be a therapist, but also to be a speaker, as well as a motivational speaker, a photographer, a published author of my book, Gratitude is Always in Season, and I'll share that with you here in a little bit, but also a poet. And I've got some really, really great things that I'll be sharing with you later on tonight, about an amazing opportunity that we have to launch Spoken Word Elevated for those of you who have ever been to our events. And so it's more than, like we said, it's more than a poetry event, it's a movement, and it's about elevating art, culture, and therapy. And for those of you who know me or have been introduced to the work that I've done over the years as a spoken word artist, as a therapist, and as a motivational speaker, you know that poetry is one of my favorite ways to be able to be expressive, to heal, and also to inspire others to do the same. And so, Spoken Word Elevated is that platform that my husband and I started now 4 years this month, 4 years ago. This month serves as our 4 year anniversary doing Spoken Word Elevated, which used to be every month, once a month, but we decided to pull back to be able to engage in some other work that we find that is just as important and valuable, that we wanted to dive more deeply into. And so we decided to do Spoken Word Elevated quarterly. So we will be doing a Spoken Word Elevated event July 12th at the Idle Jorg. So a big shout out to our sponsors. The Idle Jorg is actually one of them, one of our newest, largest sponsors. And so we want to give them a huge shout out and thank you for your support, for Katie, the CEO of the Idle Jorg, who has been a huge advocate in ensuring that we have a space to be able to do just that, to elevate our culture and therapy, and that we get to do it in the Idle Jorg, which is everything that the mission of Spoken Word Elevated is. So excited about that. Also want to give a shout out to our other sponsors, which of course we are able to do what we do normally because of spoken or speak on it radio, who unfortunately you won't hear tonight, just because we had a little couple of glitches, but you can still listen to them in between listening to us on YouTube or Facebook. If you want to go to my website, Inspired on Purpose services.com, and click on the podcast plus resource, you can actually go to the radio station and click on that tab, and you can listen to the music even though you won't hear this on the radio station tonight. But like I said, we'll be back in full effect hopefully here next Thursday, where we'll be able to sync all of that together. But like I said, you can always listen to music on there 24/7, no matter where you are. We have listeners from all over the world that listen to us. So we're just grateful for what Speak On It radio does, especially what Speak On It media does. I don't have one of my husband's magazines, but I will get one when we take a commercial break. But I want to give him a huge shout out for the work that he has done to not only promote small businesses, but artists, and just people doing amazing work around the community. And that is highlighted in his latest magazine and his latest edition of his magazine for Speak On It magazine. And so I will share that with y'all a little later too. But overall, the overarching of that is Speak On It Media. That is the radio station, the magazine, and then also TV. And of course, what he does here in helping us with therapy on the mic through Inspired on Purpose. So thank you, love, for being a part of that. I know you're watching probably on YouTube or something like that. So just want to give you a personal shout out. And I love you and I appreciate all the hard work that you do. I also want to give a shout out to Herbal Intellect. Want to give a shout out to my brother Paul, who is all about holistic healing and health. And so give a shout out to him and for the work that you do, brother. And I've had him on my show several times. And so you will probably hear and see him again. He is with us, and thank you for all the hard work that you do in the community to help us heal and to be healthy. Also want to give a shout out to Leo's Alkaline Water, which, right here, so that y'all can see, I'm not playing. When it comes to water, Leo's Alkaline Water, that's all I drink. This right here. So shout out to Leo for amazing water. So we definitely going to talk about in healing and therapy and all that, how important it is for us to make sure that we stay hydrated, because sometimes the stressors that we are dealing with is not necessarily external as much as it is internal if we're not giving our bodies the right nutrients. And alkaline water is really good, and there's a lot of great properties and things that help, which is one of the reasons why I love it, and I definitely have noticed the difference drinking it. So giving a huge shout out to you, Leo. Also want to give a shout out to one of our older sponsors, but we also want to give a shout out to Cafe, which is Community Alliance of the Far East Side, who did an amazing job. I want to give a shout out to Dominic Dorsey, who through his organization, Indie Don't Sleep, thank you so much for what you do, or Naptown Don't Sleep. Thank you so much for what you do in the community. It is truly, truly appreciated and does not go unnoticed. My husband and I had the opportunity to go last week. Everything just feels like it all just, everything, it was like all these things at the same time, but we definitely made sure to we made it out to Melanin in May. And it was a beautiful time, and it was just so great to see so many beautiful Black faces celebrating life, culture, art, music, business, health, all of those things. It was beautiful to be around. And so it's always one of our highlights as we are rolling into the summer months. So I want to give a shout out to Cafe as well as to Dominic and your team. Thank you for all the work that you do. And then last but not least, I mentioned this before, but I'll mention it again, giving a shout out to Spoken Word Elevated. Because of the work that Spoken Word Elevated does, it allows us to continue to have, artistic conversations around therapy and healing. And so I don't know about you, but what is most important to me when I think about healing, it's having safe spaces to be able to share what's on your heart and what's on your mind. And a lot of times, we sometimes feel that we have to keep that bottled in. And that could be oftentimes because we don't know where to put our energy, or even sometimes the words. Maybe the words, we have a lot to say, but we don't know where to put it. And so, Spoken Word Elevated has been a space that I've noticed for many people in our community, that have come to open mic, have shared their heart, and for people who have never written ever in their life, and to get on the stage and to be filled with so much support and love and encouragement that has led people to start writing for the first time. I had folks who came up to me afterwards and said that they wanted to publish a book, or they wanted to start writing, or it was a part of their healing journey. And so, Spoken Word Elevated has been a huge part of the work that we do here with Inspired on Purpose and with Therapy on the Mic. And I'm so excited to later talk more about how you can be a part of this amazing event that's going to be coming up July 12th, which is a Saturday from 11 to 1. I posted about it on my social media, on Instagram, on Facebook. So you can get more information. You can go to the website, which is www.spokenwordelevated.com. And you can also learn more about it on my website, which is inspiredonpurposeservices.com. But yeah, I'll be putting some more information on there pretty soon. But if you are on here, if you could just put in the chat real quick, like, how are you? I just want to hear from some folks. If you are listening in, um, tell me how you're doing, how you're feeling, how you're living. If you are logged in, I know it makes me think about. I wish Lamont was here right now because it makes me think about. He would always say, you know, you always got the looky loos, people who like to look but they don't want to say nothing, which is totally fine. That's totally fine. But I always think it's cool, like when you get opportunity to have people that come on and share, just say hi. Oh, do we have somebody? Hey, Tamika, what's up? I see you, sis. I'm doing well. That's good. That's good. Thank you so much for sharing something on here. Because like I said, I could talk to myself all day, but I'd rather not. So yeah. So tell me, like on a scale from 0 to 10, because I always want to check in with people when we're having these conversations. Like on a scale from 0 to 10, 10 being like you feel like you're on top of the world, everything is great, or zero, like this is the worst day ever and you could crawl in a hole and never come out. Like, give me a number. Where are you on that scale from 0 to 10? How you feeling? How you feeling? And if you are on here too, like, please put something in the chat. Let me know how you're feeling. Let me know that you're here as well. I really appreciate that. Thank you for the invite. You are so welcome, Tamika. You are so welcome. Thank you for joining. And if you can, like, text some people. Like, if y'all listening to this right now, I always say this is a community conversation. So if you are going to benefit from it, I'm sure that somebody else would. So just send them the link and, like, get them to join so that they can listen in as well. I really appreciate that. Cool. All right. So I guess there's some more people maybe jumping on here. Um, so let's see. Let's see. Um, uh, okay. Okay. Um, yeah. So, one of the things that I'm really excited about in this season is warmer weather. Now, I don't know about y'all, because today was kind of a confusing day. Like it started off, it was sunny, it was really nice outside, and then like as I was heading home, I was like, wow, like it's 62 degrees. Like what happened? Um, it definitely the weather changed quickly, and it's supposed to get like in the 50s tonight, which is yeah, this is more like fall weather. But again, I will take this weather over snow any day. Any day. So tell me what you think. Oh, you're 7, Tamika. You're 7. Okay, awesome. Awesome, awesome. Well, I hope by the end of this show tonight that you will be at a 10 and that you'll be able to walk away with something that will be of encouragement and inspiration to you. So thank you for joining in, and I'm just gonna go ahead and get into it so that we will not delay because our special guest is on here and she will be on here at 7. So for those of y'all that are waiting to hear from this brilliant woman, you are in for a treat. So you'll definitely be hearing from her at 7 o'clock. But just wanted to get some more folks on here so we can have more of a discussion. As we do that, um, I do want to ask what's maybe one thing this year so far, because it's crazy to believe that it like we're almost in June. We are literally halfway through the year, which feels crazy to me to even say that. But as I think about that, like what do you believe has been a good change in your life since the beginning of 2025, and what's been a difficult change that you've experienced in your life since the beginning of 2025? If you want to put in the chat, you can. Because that's probably one of the bigger things that I really want us to look at. Because as we're going to be talking tonight, tonight's topic is about how therapy can help develop gratitude for mental clarity. And if there's one thing that I know as a therapist, it is so important to have clarity because life can throw us a lot of curveballs and it can feel at times like what we started or wanted to accomplish may not be happening at the rate that we thought it would happen. And so then we can sometimes get in our heads and overanalyze or whatever the case may be, and it may cause us to lose sight of what the goal that we set out to do in the very beginning, um, and we might get a little sidetracked. So one of the reasons why I wanted to have this discussion, because last week, for those of y'all that may have watched, you can go to previous episodes on YouTube, which again, you just put in the @ and then it's just inspired on purpose. So ED, inspired on purpose. When you go, you'll see that last week's conversation was around stigmas around therapy. And my husband and I had the conversation about the series on Netflix called Forever. And it's really a family friendly show. I would definitely say I probably wouldn't want youth younger than like high school to watch it, just because there are a couple of moments that I was like, I probably wouldn't, because that's a whole nother topic. But the point is that in this movie, there, I think, are a lot of nods to the importance of therapy individually, for families, for youth, and just even dealing with trauma, and looking at that culturally, looking at that in our society, and just how do we handle conflict. And there's just a lot of different parts of the show that was a really great discussion around breaking the stigma of therapy. Because when we look at what's happening, not just in our society, but in our communities or in our families or the people closest to us, how many of us or how many people do you personally know are going to therapy or have even expressed it? Not to say that that needs to be a public discussion, but if you're not aware that that's a normal thing or that should be normalized, then when you might start realizing like, hey, I need help or I need someone to talk to because I'm struggling with dot dot dot, and you don't know anybody in your circle who has gone to therapy or who's had a great experience with therapy, it can start feeling pretty daunting when it comes to how do I even go about getting help because I don't want to look like the oddball out. And so that's one of the reasons why this topic today about how therapy can help develop gratitude for mental clarity is so important because as we talk about on our show with Therapy on the Mic, we talk about all things on how to develop gratitude, growth, and healing. Um, and one of the things that we focus on when we think about therapy, therapy plus gratitude equals greater peace, clarity, and purpose in both our personal lives as well as what we can see in our communities. I've seen that personally in my own life, but I've seen it in the lives of others that I work with as clients. And so when we have gratitude in our lives, when we find things that we can be grateful for, and it doesn't mean that we are absent or ignorant of things that are difficult, but we're making intentional choices to focus on certain things so that we can move forward and not get stuck. That is where we can find healing, and therapy can help us figure out what those things are or where we can make those focuses. Because really, a therapist, the role of a therapist, hey, what's up? Love this. Thank you. Thank you for joining. Thank you for joining the speaker box. Thank you for getting on. Um, but one of the things that I really love about why therapy is so pivotal and so important is that it really does create a safe space for there to be little to no judgment. And again, depending on who your therapist is and how you connect with them, you can feel a complete openness and safety to completely let your walls down and just be open and honest about where you are. Um, but other times when you don't have a good connection with your therapist, or if you are dealing with a lot of layers with trauma, it can sometimes be very difficult. And so being able to be honest can be really difficult as well, which you should want to be very honest in therapy, because if you can't be honest there, then where else can you be? And knowing that you can get the help that you need and the skills and the resources that come from being in a therapy session. So that's one of the reasons why I say that this topic is so important. So I always say, why does this discussion matter as we are going a little bit deeper into this conversation? And then I want to share with you a little bit about our special guest, what she does, the background of all the work that she does, because how we met was very unique, and it was actually very inspiring to me because as a black therapist, licensed in school counseling with my master's degree in counseling and counseling education, what I hear a lot from people who are looking for therapists, particularly those who are black and brown. And then sometimes I've had clients too that are not a person of color, and they want a therapist who is a person of color. But the thing that I hear often is I don't know many therapists of color, let alone black therapists, which is probably one of the top things that I hear clients are struggling with when it comes to connecting with the therapist or feeling like they can completely open up. And so when I met our special guest Charla, she was definitely someone that I immediately felt a sense of like, here's somebody else who is in the field, who is doing the work, and hearing her heart, and even just how she set the tone for talking about healthy boundaries, and how she takes care of herself and how she has her own self-care as a therapist. Like, that was just such a beautiful thing to hear, and it was affirming for me, because being a therapist, being a woman, being black, uh, all these things, right? And sometimes when you're trying to find people that can understand the space that you're in, and also people who are encouraging you to ensure that you are well, right? That you're not just a machine, like putting out, performing, but like that you are caring for yourself. And hearing her talk about how she does that and also how she was willing to communicate that in the space that we were in amongst other Black therapists, I thought was really inspiring. And so, why are we having this discussion today? Good question. I'm glad you asked. Well, mental clarity doesn't come from chaos, if you didn't already notice. It comes from intention. What do I mean by that? Therapy can be a guiding force that helps us slow down, reflect, and give gratitude to the spaces where we need to grow the most. So here's a couple of quick statistics, just in case you didn't know. According to the Greater Good Science Center, individuals who practice gratitude regularly are 23% less likely to experience symptoms of depression. That's big. Another interesting fact is the American Psychology Association notes that therapy focused on mindfulness and acceptance, like we're going to talk about, this is a part of Charla's work, ACT therapy, significantly improves emotional regulation and cognitive clarity. So, in essence, in order for us to be mentally to have mental clarity, we also have to have our emotions intact. Usually, the first thing that goes when we don't have mental clarity is our emotions. When our emotions are all over the place, it could be for a number of reasons. We've either been triggered, we, have, dealt with some form of trauma, or it could be something very simple. We haven't eaten, right? But usually our emotions are the first to go. And when they go, so does our minds. And it's crazy how quickly we can go from a 0 to 10, or from a 10 to 0, whatever number, from good to bad, if our emotions are not regulated well and in a healthy way. And so therapy helps us to learn coping skills, to be able to slow down, to reflect, to have skills that helps us to be more mindful and also to be more grateful. Because a lot of times when we're dealing with lifelong trauma and issues, it can almost feel very overwhelming when you're trying to unpack and figure out what is the root cause that can be causing triggers, or other, traumatic things inside of us, or even things that we experience around us, our environment, our family, the jobs that we're at. There are a lot of things that can cause us to not have emotional regulation or have mental clarity. But when we start asking the right questions, and we have a therapist that can help us to walk through a series of questions to help us to get to the root cause of whatever it is that is creating a problem, that's where we can start to find healing. And we can also start to find a pathway to solutions, which is ultimately what you want at the end of the day. When you're in a therapy session, you want solutions. Otherwise, you wouldn't be going to therapy. And chime in if you agree with this. Oh, what's up, Rose? Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you so much for joining. Tamika said, sad but true. Yes, right. Our emotions can definitely get the best of us. Um, and I'm a therapist, right? I have my own therapist, and I say, if a therapist needs a therapist, what does that mean for the rest of the world, right? And sometimes we have to take our own medicine as therapists, and we have to remind ourselves of self-care, how important that is. We have to remind ourselves of having healthy boundaries. We have to remind ourselves of the same things that we tell our clients are the same things that we have to do for ourselves in order for us to be well, so that we can care for other people. We have to be well and care for ourselves first. But here's another quick statistic I wanted to share with you. A study published in Psychology Today found that 90% of people who kept a gratitude journal reported greater focus, improved sleep, and reduced stress in just 2 weeks. That's crazy. Just for spending time journaling about gratitude. Isn't that crazy? That is, to me, one of the reasons why I focus so much on gratitude, because you can look at it from a just practical standpoint. the difference in your day to day. Like if you think, like for those of y'all that are listening, whether if you're on Facebook or YouTube, just today, if you could just do a quick survey in your mind, how many times were you mentally grateful for things today? Like where you're like, I'm grateful for, like if you woke up this morning, were you thinking more about things that you were grateful for, or were you complaining more? Or were you finding things that you felt like weren't right or that you needed to fix? Or were you like, despite these things, this is what I'm grateful for? Like if you could count how many times today that you took a, what's the word that I'm going to use? That you surveyed your day and you looked at everything and you said, thank you, whether if it's thank you God, whether if it's I thank myself, or I thank somebody else, right? Like that you took a moment just for gratitude, and you acknowledge those things that you were thankful for today. How many times would you say that you did it, right? How many times do you think you do that on a day to day? If you don't think that it's very often, that's probably a good place to start, because where we find a lot of complaining, there's definitely high levels of stress and anxiety, and even sometimes depression. And so we have to look at what's causing us to feel that we cannot find things to be grateful for, or that there aren't things uh, that we can find the silver lining in, even if they're difficult. Because that's, if we can find those areas in our lives, that's where we will also find growth, because that shows that we're maturing, because life doesn't always go our way. Life doesn't always, you know, do what we want it to do. And sometimes it doesn't, if we really look back and we think of things that we really wanted and we're like, man, I'm actually really glad that didn't happen. And those are things also that you can say, I'm grateful. I'm grateful that that didn't happen. That's growth. And those are things that we can learn in a therapy session, because sometimes it requires a skilled eye from the outside looking in to hear what's going on when we're open enough to share, and then being able to help us to unpack those areas that will allow us to find the brighter moments in our lives that really do help us to get unstuck. Because that's usually a lot of what happens when we are dealing with stress and anxiety and a lot of other emotions, is because we feel so laser focused on that particular area that we can't see past it and we can't look at anything else around us, which then can cause us to feel stuck. That is ultimately what happens when we're dealing with issues. So let's see, you got a couple of responses here. Oh, okay. Thought I had a comment. Oh, limit. What happened? Oh, let's see. Maybe. Oh, what happened? Uh-oh. I don't know. Well, if you're still listening, I don't know what's up. Maybe on my end, maybe things are okay, but for some reason the Facebook Live is not working. So you can always hop on YouTube. You just look up Inspired on Purpose on YouTube and you can chat there. So I don't really know what happened. We're having trouble playing this video. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, we're gonna keep it moving. But yeah, so if you are tracking with me, I would love to hear your thoughts or your feedback. Like, what do you think about what I just shared? Because like I said, it can definitely sometimes be challenging when we're dealing with life, and especially when we find ourselves in these spaces where we want to be in a healthier space, but we also have to realize, like, we don't always see our blind spots. And if we don't see our blind spots, then it's going to be difficult for us to um, it's going to be difficult for us to be able to find those those spaces of finding gratitude. But like I said, we can always continue. That's something that we all can work on. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Because one thing that I think is so interesting is the work that Miss Charla Yearwood does. And so, for those of you that are not familiar with her work, and she'll be on here in just a few minutes, I'll share a little bit about what she does and also breaking down a couple of the concepts too about the type of work that she does, because I looked up some of this too, which I thought was really interesting. These are the things that I learned about to some degree. We didn't go super deep in grad school about some of these areas of different therapeutic styles or just different concepts of therapy. But one of the things that I thought was really interesting was that there's a lot of overlap when we look at different types of therapy. And so one of the types of therapy that she does what's called EMDR. If you've never heard of it, what it stands for is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. Big words, but I'll make it a little bit more simple for you. What it is, it's a psychotherapy approach. And really, the design of this approach is to help people heal from trauma, distressing memories, and emotional wounds. So, this helps people who are dealing with high levels of PTSD, or what's also known as post traumatic stress disorder. Something else that is interesting about EMDR is that it helps the brain reprocess traumatic or upsetting memories so they no longer feel as emotionally overwhelmed or triggered by the things that cause them to respond in that way. So, for instance, if someone has had a traumatic experience in life, and a, a, a word that is often used when someone is feeling this or dealing with this type of experiences, they feel stuck. And so, what happens is EMDR helps the brain to deal with the brain works in like basically in a raw, unprocessed form. And so what happens with EMDR, it helps the brain to finish processing and store those memories or those traumatic memories in a healthier way that's more adaptive. And Charlotte, I told her, I said, if I'm saying something wrong, this is not right, you can totally correct me. So when she gets on here, I'll definitely uh, let her share that. But I think that that was really interesting to learn a little bit about what she does with EMDR. Also, another thing of how it works, therapists use this as a guide to help clients to briefly focus on a traumatic memory while simultaneously engaging in bilateral stimulation. So, often through guided eye movements, tapping, or sounds. And they use alternating left right stimulations that are believed to activate both sides of the brain and help reduce the emotional intensity of the memory. So, something that happens often, if I read a statistic a long time ago that particularly in communities of color, particularly in Black and Brown communities, there are higher levels of PTSD than there are those who have been to war. And there's a lot of reasons behind that, but some of the basic reasons as we think about being Black in America is we think about racism, discrimination, microaggressions, and the list goes on and on and on. And so when you're dealing with that from day one all the way up to however old you are, and you think about these traumatizing experiences, something like EMDR could be a form of therapy to help you to get unstuck, and to help you to reduce emotional intensities of those memories that may have caused PTSD. It also helps with people that have anxiety or panic attacks, anyone who's dealt with any kind of grief or loss. Also, for people who have dealt with sexual or physical abuse, or any kind of combat trauma. So even as I mentioned about people who've been to war, this is also a good form of therapy to use for that. Let's see. Oh, we got a few responses. Here we got. Tamika said, I'm an advocate for therapy and I have a relationship with God. I started therapy in 2013. Awesome. And it completely changed my life. It definitely works. The speaker box says, we don't always see our blind spots. True. Yep. Therapy is needed. Big words. Right. That's why I was like, look, and we have the, well, she says she's not an expert, but this is a part of her practice. This is the work that she does. So I'm going to introduce her, and I do wanted to share one more thing about another part of her work that I think is really interesting that I want us to know. So as she goes into this, that she can completely be like, "Nah, we ain't gonna talk about none of that," or she may elaborate on it. But I want one thing, the other piece of her work that she does, which is called ACT therapy, or also called acceptance and commitment therapy. And so it's built on the idea that pain and discomfort are a natural part of life. And instead of fighting them or trying to eliminate them completely, we can learn to accept them and take purposeful action in alignment with our values. Which, at the core of it, what I hear when I read that is, it is difficult, especially when we're dealing with any kind of grief or loss. Um, there are there's a cycle to grief, and it's not always linear. And so when you're dealing with grief, this is actually a really great form of therapy because it helps you to go through the work of grief, but also find ways that you can deal with the pain and discomfort in a healthy way, without completely ignoring it, because that can be a part of the denial piece in grief. So I'm gonna let her talk about all that good stuff. But let me introduce you all to this amazing woman. Her name is Charla Yearwood. She is a licensed counselor in schools and social work. She is an EMDR plus ACT therapist. She's a speaker, inclusive practice trainer. She is also the founder of Connected in Community LLC. I met Charla when we were at what was called a Black Therapist Meetup. Our connection was, I think, personally, and it could just be me, but I really enjoyed our connection because I loved hearing her story. For me, that's what's big when it comes to doing these kinds of things, because her approach to therapy was not only refreshing, but it was rooted in empathy, inclusion, and authenticity. And that was the first thing that I was like, she a bad woman, because she knows her boundaries. She knows how to communicate them. And as a Black woman who is caring for a lot of people and who nurtures a lot of people, she was able to communicate it in a way where she was like, I know my limits. And that for me was such a great model that I needed to be reminded of. And so I'm honored to have her on the show. So everyone, please join in welcoming Miss Charla Yearwood. Welcome.
Well, thank you so much. You make me sound all great. That felt good. Thank you. Appreciate
Well,
it.
you are. You're welcome. How are you?
I'm pretty good. How are you? Thank you for having
I'm
me.
doing.
I appreciate being here.
Yes, 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 yes. So, I know that you are a busy woman. You were telling me recently that you were just wrapping up with school.
Well, I was wrapping up a session. I had clients today, so
Oh,
I
like,
was
but
teaching.
like during
Yeah,
this season, do you also do you teach too?
I'm not teaching right now. We're summer, so I'm done with teaching for the fall. I mean for the spring, and then this fall, I will be taking classes. I'm going to go back to school.
Okay, yay! Gotta love school. Look, what do they call it? I'm a professional student.
Regular black girl, whoa, right? Yeah.
Well, I shared a lot of stuff, but maybe in the background he's like, "Girl, ain't none of that right. Ain't none of that right."
No,
But
you're spot on. All of that is
was it
true.
okay?
I do
Okay,
I practice EMDR and acceptance and commitment therapy. Um, what I would explain about those is generally it's just like how I approach the work. It's the tools that I use to help my clients. Um,
mm-hmm.
And if you were looking for a therapist or working with a therapist, you could ask them about their modalities or what tools they use to help you through the healing process. And those are the ones that I use most often.
Now I'm curious, like, and want to give a shout out. Carmen said, "Good evening, learning new things, love obtaining new knowledge. Thank you for joining." I wanted to hear from you. What led you into this particular practice? Because when you hear therapy, there's so many types of therapy. So,
Mhm.
what made you go this direction?
So I will go all the way back a little bit further before then, like how I even got to become a therapist, because my route to becoming a therapist is not a traditional route like I've heard a lot of other people come to it. So my by profession, I'm a social worker. So I have my master's in social work. And if you didn't know, most therapists are social workers. Everyone doesn't make that correlation. But I practiced and studied to really address like social justice issues. So I was working in a space of wanting to create programs and address policies as it related to social justice work. It
Mm-hmm.
just so happened that I got job opportunities and my career developed in a way that led me eventually to doing more clinical therapeutic work so that I got a therapy license. But my training and background is really more social justice rooted and oriented. And so I think that that really heavily influences how I approach therapy and what I do with my clients, and then the modalities and treatments and all of that that I use with how I address people. So, for example, because most of my clients that I support and continue to support are Black, that's I'm not apologetic about that.
Right. Come on.
I mostly serve Black people. Not because I won't serve any and everybody, but that's just majority of who I've served.
Right.
And so, with understanding the needs for Black folks, to me, it would be irresponsible of me to not bring in an understanding of the social, political, cultural things that shape and impact the lived experiences of Black people. And
Yeah.
so, interweaving those things into how I provide treatment and care, that's a heavy part about like how I do my work. So all of that to say, then we're talking about EMDR, or acceptance and commitment therapy. That's part of why I chose those modalities, is because it holds space for me to be able to support people with those lived experiences. And without getting too controversial, there are some therapy practices, modalities that are more difficult to hold space for the lived experiences of people because they focus heavily on changing behaviors or reshaping your thinking and getting your brain to believe that things maybe aren't as bad as they are or something like that. And I don't want to do that,
Yeah.
especially when working mostly with Black people. I don't want you to pretend like your racist boss isn't racist. That's
Right.
not how I want you to feel. I don't want
Right.
like I just want to like don't pay attention to that so much. Just focus on your work. That's how some therapists approach the work, and I don't want to slam other people, but like that's not true to me. So
Right.
acceptance and
Neither it
commitment,
is for me.
yeah, a tool like acceptance and commitment therapy would allow me to talk to a client and say, listen, here's the reality: your boss is racist. They don't like you. Now that we have that understanding and we can know that that's the truth, how do we want to navigate that landscape? How can I support you in finding and developing strategies? Do we need to build relationships? Do we need to be strategic so that you are not carrying so much of an emotional burden? But acceptance and commitment therapy and EMDR for reprocessing the trauma and the weight of those experiences allows me to support my clients in a way that I'm saying it's not for you need to fix yourself because of the things that are going on around you. Sometimes the truth is we are all existing in a society that doesn't necessarily promote and support our wellness and our wholeness. People have jobs and are working 40, 50 hours a week, two jobs just to make ends meet. All of these responsibilities, they do not allow space for us to be mentally well and whole. And
Yeah.
so I don't want to blame individual people for that outcome. I want to support them in being able to navigate a reality that's not necessarily conducive to their health. Sorry,
I
that was a
love
lot,
that.
but I hope that makes sense.
That was perfect. I
Okay.
mean, and I say that because when that hits home for me because I came out of that space, and knowing that when you are in spaces where there is, forms of racism or discrimination, it can be difficult to try to figure out what did I do wrong,
Mm-hmm.
right? And not saying that even if racism and discrimination is present, that you don't have flaws of yourself,
Right.
but not to the point where you look at the treatment and you compare it to, colleagues that you have, and you're
Mm-hmm.
like, but that it
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't it's not even on the same level, like,
Mm-hmm.
so when you start dealing with the questions, or a lot of times I tell my clients, question your question and doubt your doubts,
Mm-hmm.
and then use that as your framework to, get to the root cause of why am I feeling stressed, why am I feeling anxious. And even when I hear like what you do with with act therapy, it's the acceptance and then the commitment. The acceptance is this did happen,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, not being in denial, like, no, that didn't happen, no, they did not just say
Uh-huh.
something really racist.
Uh-huh.
No, they did say something very racist.
Yeah.
But then saying like, okay, but what is my response? Do I retaliate? Do I go forward and I communicate what
Mm-hmm.
happened? Do I report it to HR?
Mm-hmm.
Like, do I call EEOC? Like,
Mm-hmm.
what are my options? So then
Mm-hmm.
that way you're not feeling like, when we talked about in the beginning, not feeling stuck. And can you
Absolutely.
speak to that part about how a client may come to you and maybe some of the things that could cause them to feel stuck, and how the work you do helps them to get unstuck?
Absolutely. So I'm going to do a less charged example, but kind of in the same vein of what we've already been talking about. So, you have a birthday party, or, you have a birthday dinner, no one shows up, or everyone shows up late. No one really seems like they've invested in it. And it hurts your feelings. You are bothered with your friends because they're not showing up for you how they are. When we're talking about acceptance and commitment therapy, we need to wrestle with and get to the point of recognizing no, they didn't all show up for you. No, everyone wasn't able to like be there or didn't show up, or you don't have the kind of support like you thought you had. All of those things, we can get to that truth. And then when we're looking to move forward and like how we're going to move forward, maybe some of it is personal reflection. Do you show up for other people? Are you a caring friend? Do you go to their parties and events? Oh, maybe that's where we need to do some work. Uh, and sometimes it's like, oh, the truth is, like, these aren't really, really my people. Like, I thought that they were my people. And I need to adjust and find some new friend groups. But
Mm,
sometimes we get stuck in just like, I'm mad. No one showed up for me, and no one showed up for me how I wanted them to. And that didn't happen. And I'm mad. And I'm mad. And now I'm going to treat other people and I'm going to engage with other people because no one cares about me. No one shows up
mm,
for me. And like, you're just stuck in that
mm.
place. And how is that helping you?
Yeah,
What is that serving?
yeah.
It happened. We can feel the hurt. And here's where EMDR is really great.
Hmm.
The real reality is we have to just feel the sad and hurt that you
Yeah,
had an expectation and you wanted your friends to show up for your birthday dinner and they didn't.
yeah.
And if that means you got to have a good cry and just feel that hurt, you can feel that.
Yes,
We can go through that process. You can feel that and you can let it go. Or
yes.
you can carry it around all day, every day, and everyone will feel the impact of you
Hmm.
constantly carrying around the hurt because some people didn't show up for your birthday dinner.
Mm. That's good. That's good. That example almost makes me think. Do you remember the show Moesha?
Yeah.
So, do you remember the conversations between Moesha and Kim and
Mhm.
what their relationship was like?
Mhm. Mhm.
Okay, so let me ask you this question. And this is still related to what we're talking about,
Mhm.
because my husband and I were having this conversation when we were watching it yesterday. We just have these nostalgic moments,
Yeah.
and we're like, was Moesha really a good friend to Kim,
Mhm.
or was
Mhm.
Kim more a good friend to Moesha?
Mhm.
And the example that came across was when Kim and Moesha were trying out to cheerlead. Kim got the role, Moesha didn't. And then, of course, everybody was kind of like clamoring for Kim's attention when Kim is usually the one who's always Moesha's cheerleader. But in this case,
Mhm.
Moesha didn't want to be a champion for Kim, celebrating that she was, kind of like this star in cheerleading. And so the person that kind of like checked her, um, Lord Jesus, what is the brother's name?
Miles.
No, not Miles.
Oh,
The
you
one that
mean
I
not her actual brother? Yeah,
no, not her. No, no, no.
yeah, yeah,
The one.
yeah.
What's his name? Dang it, I can't think.
Is it Hakeem?
Uh,
Um,
Hakeem. There we go. Hakeem. Yes, Hakeem. I was like, it's literally on the tip of my tongue.
you pulled it
Hakeem.
out for
Hakeem.
me. Yep, I got
Yeah.
Hakeem.
Right. So Hakeem had to be the one to check her to say like, oh, the reason why you're acting like this is because you are always looking for her to be your cheerleader, but you don't want to be her cheerleader now. So you need to check yourself. And she couldn't say nothing. She really had to check herself and was like, I do expect her to always be there for me, but now that she needs me to be there for her, I don't want to be. Why? And
Hmm.
it's these are the kinds of questions that sometimes we have to ask ourselves when we get in our emotions. So even when we were talking about emotional regulation, how important that is, because when our emotions are all over the place, we can't have mental clarity, which is the focus of this topic tonight,
Hmm.
which is how can we have mental clarity, and also using gratitude as a way to help us to get to that mental clarity if we can see what the lay of the land is,
Hmm.
like what's really causing us to respond in unhealthy ways. Does that make
Hmm.
sense?
Absolutely, 100%. That's a great example. And we do, you're right. We have to ask ourselves, like, why am I feeling this way? Because 99% of the time, when someone is making you feel some kind of way, I don't care what that is, it is actually a reflection of how of who you are and has
Mm,
very little to do with them. So right now, if you cussed me clean out, you just like straight up cuss me out,
right.
honest to goodness, I can just be like, oh, okay. And I can keep going about my day in life and it wouldn't have to impact anything about who I am unless I pick it up.
Mm, break
Unless I
that down.
pick up your hurt feelings and that you're cussing me out and I like own that. I don't have to. You don't actually have to be responsive to everything that happens all around you. You don't have to pick everything up.
Mm,
A lot of times what people are saying and doing is a reflection of where they are. Just the
mm.
same how you interact with people. And when someone just like really grinding on your nerves and annoying you, you might want to get curious about what about them is getting to me. Because it's not necessarily them. They're just out here living their life, doing what they want to do. Happy. You don't like them. Because you don't like them. And sometimes the reality is, I don't like them because I don't like them. I don't like how they move. And that's okay.
Yeah, yeah,
There's
yeah,
some folks I don't like. I don't like.
yeah,
I don't like everybody. And I have learned to accept the reality is that Charlotte don't like everybody.
yeah.
Charlotte ain't always nice. Charlotte ain't always the bigger person. All of those things is true, and I can love her in the truth of all of that.
The fact that you said Charlotte's not always the bigger person. And I mean, but that's real though, right? And that's one
Mhm.
of the things that I really admire, even in, because I want us to talk a little bit about, if that's okay,
Cool. I'm all that.
to talk about the meetup, or can we,
Okay,
or
cool.
no?
Sure. Yeah, we can talk
We
about
can't
it.
talk. Okay. So because one of the things that you said in the work that you do with our therapy lab, correct?
Hmm. Hmm.
So, can you talk a little bit about that? What led you to do that work and what led us to even meet in the first place?
Yeah, I'm going to try my best. You're asking me if we could talk about it because it's not fully formed. So I'm walking out on like thin ice because I'm not really sure what I'm saying.
Okay.
So
As much as you don't
yeah,
have to
well,
share
we're good.
whatever. Okay,
I
okay.
want to talk about it. I need to practice this, right? So I have Connection Community. That's a therapy practice, and then I saw this need for two things. One, people need low cost therapy services and they want to see a black therapist. Queer folks want to see a therapist who's queer inclusive. And to be honest, there's just not a lot of spaces for both black and queerness in the city, and that's a whole nother
Mm-hmm.
conversation.
Mm-hmm.
The other piece is that there are students who are getting their master's degree in social work, marriage and family therapy, or counseling, and they have to do at least a 1 year internship practicum where they are seeing clients and supporting clients under the supervision of a therapist in order to graduate. And there were black students who were like, I want to come and work with other black people and learn how to like do it in my voice, because not to go too deep, but what ends up happening is like you're a black student and you're going to learn how to do therapy and you want to support and serve black people. And you go to an agency or organization to do that, but all of the leadership above you is white, and how they see that you're talking to your clients, they're like, that's not professional enough, or you need to change your, and they
Mm,
push for us to whittle ourselves into what they're comfortable with. And
right.
so I was like, okay, cool, I got this space, I can let these Black students come over here and provide therapy at a low cost. And so I created this nonprofit art therapy lab to be able to do that. And so for the last year and a half, we've graduated 5 graduate students who saw clients at a low cost and did all of that. Yay, all my little babies are out here. Um, and so that has been working. But to your point before about my boundaries, is I had to get to a place where I was like, this is too much, because like I still have to see my
Yeah.
clients and do my work, and it was just too much for me to manage on my own. And so, community being community, God love community. I kind of reached out to all of these Black therapists in the city and was like, listen, been doing this project, it's been dope, great work is happening. I can't do this by myself and I need help. And I'm kind
Yeah.
of calling on everybody to look at how we can do some things differently. And I've had some allies in this, like Dr. Tishner, who we talked, and he had some ideas also for ways that we could do things. And essentially, what we're looking to do is to create a coalition of therapists, Black therapists, who are ready and willing to support the development of new therapists entering the
Mhm.
field so that we can have an increased number of Black therapists to support Black people in Indianapolis, and how we can support those students from through the school process with scholarship and just like coaching and mentorship as they earn their degree, to internship afterwards, to employment afterwards, so that we can make sure that we are supporting and developing more Black therapists for Black people in Indianapolis. So that's that project.
That's beautiful. And if you thought you were fumbling, there was none, not at
Good.
all.
Okay, I did it.
Yeah, and the reason why I wanted you to bring that up is because, like I said, the piece that I really um, think is a really important piece that we have to, and even if you're not black or a person of color, because it was also stated when we're having these discussions, and I remember even while I was in my master's degree program, I actually did a study on youth and young adults and how their education and mindset is developed when they have those in authority of color.
Oh, wow.
And all the lessons that they learn about themselves and
Mm-hmm.
what they learn about others that don't look like them,
Mm-hmm.
that may be in society considered the minority, but also the benefits of when
Mm-hmm.
you have someone that is a person of color in a, in author in a in an authoritative, and I can't even speak
You
today,
got it.
but they're
Yeah.
they're like in a place of position where they can have authority.
Mm-hmm.
And so because of that, um, what one of the things that I found was that they were more empathetic. They were willing to be more open minded about how the world is shaped and decisions are made.
Mm-hmm.
And they're more not just cooperative, but have more of a collaborative mindset
Mm-hmm.
where their framework is open to teamwork and not um, what's the word I want to use,
Not competitive.
one shape fits
Uh-huh.
is
Yeah.
like
There's more
um
diversity.
yeah, so, and diversity is not like this cuss word. It's like it's a beautiful thing, like
Uh-huh.
because the way that I, especially when someone explained this to me one day, to be able to articulate to someone that doesn't understand why diversity is so important, it's like, think about it from just a very practical level. Do you want to eat the same thing every day the rest of your life?
Yeah.
Right? Do you want to have green beans and mashed potatoes and meatloaf every day,
Mm-hmm.
breakfast, lunch, and dinner? Right? And then even if you want to go even beyond that, do you just want mashed potatoes for the rest of your life and no seasoning? No.
No,
You
no.
gotta have diversity. You gotta switch it up. That life is better when you have um when there isn't autonomy in one particular thing.
Mhm.
Like we're all part of this big puzzle piece called life, and nobody has authority over it all.
Yeah.
And when we start taking things away from different groups, or even uh, removing voices that have different perspectives and also experiences that help people to be better as a whole, like then you really start minimizing the growth, I think, that can happen in any individual, whether they are a person of color or not.
Yeah. To your point about diversity, and I just want to speak to this really quickly about what this looks like in therapy. One, I believe the data shows that students who have a teacher of color, particularly a black teacher, all of the students, no matter their race, have higher outcomes versus students in with a white teacher, even though they might be a highly skilled teacher. The black and brown students tend to lag behind their white students, and that's not the same case. That disparity doesn't exist as much within when they have a teacher of color. And I think that there's some things we need to understand related to like why all of this happens and all of these things. One, when as a black therapist, where I'm working with, because I have white clients too, and I'm working with anyone, there is a comfort with having an uncomfortable conversation and naming certain things. And what we really see is the challenge is the tolerance level for the therapist to engage in conversations that are uncomfortable. And and one of the consequences of being a black woman is that I have had to grow comfortable in this life with having uncomfortable conversations.
All the time.
Kind of my own trauma response of having to exist under all the systems that I have means that I am a little bit more comfortable and used to being self-reflective. That is something that is a requirement. If I walk in a room of men, if I walk in a room, like any woman who walks in a room and it's all men, like there's a hypervigilance. There's a recognizing like how you are and how you're being perceived and how you're going to operate in that space just for safety. Just the same as if a black person walks in a room of all white people, there might be some hypervigilance of safety, of understanding how everybody else is perceiving you as well as yourself. People of color have not only their own cultural knowledge, right? Like I could pick up on the Moesha references and talk about Hakeem, but both of us, if I said Phoebe and Rachel, also know about Friends. That doesn't mean that we watched it, but because we
Right.
exist in a society and culture that force
We
those
do
things
know.
down our throat, we have to know that and ours. And the
Right.
white therapist may not know both.
Right. Right. Or find a need to even have to.
But
And yeah, and I think that is something that also needs to be acknowledged, because even in my master's program, I mean, in my cohort, I think there was what, maybe like 30. There's probably like four of us, three or four of us black, that were in my program. And, some of them are still working in education, going more into the counseling role in education. And others are doing other things. But, because there's such a wide variety of, paths that you can take when you're going into therapy, or whether if you go directly into psychology, like when I got my undergrad, because my undergrad was actually, my major was in animal sciences. I went to Purdue, and completely, this is not my field, but my minor was in psychology, and I wanted to actually go and change it to psychology, but my mom will deny to this day that she didn't want me to change my major, because she didn't think it was going to pay enough money, which you did talk about that too, and just saying how important it is for us to understand retention in this field, and how there's such a huge need for therapists of color, but also understanding the plight where you look at someone who needs therapy, and you look at how much therapy can cost versus someone who wants and can afford therapy, and they can do it at hundreds of dollars of cost, but they tend to not be in our communities. And so when you're looking at the disparities between the need and then the access, like that's a lot, if you want to speak to that.
yeah, I can speak to it really quickly. It's one of the hardships of being a black therapist who wants to serve and support the community that you come from, and just the reality is that there might not be as many people who can afford to pay you for the level of training and expertise that we have, where there might be other therapists, like white therapists, who have the same training and expertise as me, but they're able to charge more because they work with a clientele that's different from mine. And so there can just be some hardship and conflict with the limitations for how we can grow even as professionals depending on how we cater our services. And that's not to say that, like, I would love for Black folks to get the best experience possible, but there's also and it's not. This is another like, sorry, tangent. This is another soapbox thing. Like all Black people aren't poor, so I'm talking about poverty is not just Black, but it means that I need to then cater to a Black audience that makes more money to be able to uh, be in line with the level of service and care that I can provide because I'm more trained and I have grown in my own development to be honest about that. I'm really
Mm-hmm.
good.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a
Mm-hmm.
really good therapist. And since I'm
Yeah.
a really good therapist, I want to
You
charge
have to
like
charge.
I'm a really good therapist. I don't
Yeah.
want to have mediocre rates because I'm not a mediocre therapist. And
Facts.
that's just
Facts.
the reality. And that means that I'm unaccessible to some people.
Yeah.
I feel sad about that. I would love to support and be a part of looking for ways to close that gap, but I'm not willing to be the person who makes the sacrifice in order to make that happen. No.
Which that piece alone is something that I wanted us to talk about because as therapists, like I remember having a conversation with a potential client one time, and they asked me what my rate was, and I have a basic rate. You could go on my website and see it, but I said also I do a sliding scale sometimes depending on the situation and that kind of thing. But this is what I typically charge. Um, but let's talk. And the thought that their mindset was like, well, I can't. That they didn't say I can't afford it. They said, well, I can't pay that. But I literally just heard them go on a trip. But they're saying that they're struggling with different things going on in their life, and so I think how would you communicate, and this is part of this is the education piece, which
Mm-hmm.
is
Mm-hmm.
one of the reasons why we do therapy on the mic,
Mm-hmm.
because I think this is a part of the free access that people get, right? Like if you don't actually get an opportunity to go to a therapy session, you're going to hear terms, or you're going to hear us talk about different things that may hit home for you in a way that might help you to be like, oh, I think I need to talk to somebody.
Mm-hmm.
But once you get to that aha moment, then when we start talking about this is what it's going to cost to go to get the help, then it's like, well, maybe I could think of some other options. And it's like, but if you could buy a pair of shoes that were $200, or go on a trip, for just to get away to unplug, then how much more could a therapy session, and of course there's a lot of things now that you can work towards, like payment plans or whatever the case is, but something that will say like this is an investment into you, and to see it as that versus this is too expensive.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
No, yeah, it makes sense. I think one of the things we have to do is to hold space for multiple things can be true at the same time. And I think when we talk about accessibility and affordability of therapy, there are a lot of, not just like two, not just like three, there are a lot of things that are true at the same time. So here are just some of the things that are true at the same time that makes accessibility and affording therapy difficult. Insurance is terrible. Okay, and I
Talk
this is
about it.
something that like I think more just regular folks need to understand. So if I go in contract with an insurance company, I am agreeing to take whatever rate that insurance company says they will contract me to pay me for. And so I'm agreeing to X amount of dollars. Remember, I make no apologies about it, but I have additional credentials and expertise and I take the time to really study my craft. So why would I take the same rate as someone else who hasn't done that? Okay. So I would have to first agree to take the same salary, the same payment rate as everybody else who's in the insurance pool.
Mm-hmm.
And then, likely for many of you, you have a deductible that you have to meet before your insurance even kicks in. So
Mm-hmm.
you're going to have to pay for the therapy services. Sometimes you can use an HSA or an FSA, a flexible spending or health savings account, but you're going to have to pay for the insurance until you meet that deductible.
Mm-hmm.
If your deductible is two, three, four, $5,000, therapy is likely never going to get you to the point where it covers your deductible. You're going to be paying
Right.
for it out of cost that whole time.
Yep.
Okay, so that's the part with insurance. Insurance purposely pays us very little on purpose, intentionally.
Yep.
Also, if you partner with insurance, I have to give you a diagnosis. That is a requirement of the insurance company. I also have to document our sessions and they get access to that. And what happens with that information? Mm, let me just say this. Currently, the United States government needed data to find out how many people are autistic. Where did they get that information from? So, and if they have it, then they've been talks about having like an autism database and like knowing everyone who has those diagnoses. This is the issue with when we are like navigating all these things, and I just don't. So this is just like, just so everybody knows, this is part of the problem. If you had a suicide attempt, or you were contemplating, and those things are in your session notes, that can be used when your insurance company looks to see if you're going to get a life insurance policy. So that's the issue with insurance. Now,
That's good
then,
to know.
like, how many people can afford to pay for it out of pocket private pay? That's really challenging. And the
Yeah.
cost of therapy can be anywhere from $100 to $200 a session to pay for it out of pocket. And that's not because some therapist is trying to live rich on your money. Like, that's the cost of having a business. Like, I don't know about y'all, but if you go get your nails done, you go get your hair done, like, that's how much it costs to do a business. And the therapist is really charging rates comparable to what it cost for me to get my hair done or my nails done, to be
Right.
honest.
Right.
So if you're going to do that, you're going to have to make an investment. Now, there are organizations and institutions that are trying to help alleviate that cost. Real quick note on something like BetterHelp or Talkspace. Those organizations, basically what they do is they saturate the market with marketing, and they tell everybody, we're here, we're here, we're here, and they pay their therapists pennies. That's how that system works. So you only pay $55 to see a therapist through BetterHelp, and your therapist is making $20. She's working for $20 an hour. There could be some great therapists on there, but I just want you guys to ask yourself how many people you think have a master's degree and extra training and are working well at $20 an hour. So that's what those systems are. It's Walmart. It's Shein.
Yeah.
It's mass production.
It go about Shein.
So
Even though Shein be having some good deals though. I ain't gonna lie.
And if you need something, ain't no shame. Call it BetterHelp and get on Talkspace. Like, if you gotta do what you gotta do
Right.
it. I just want you to be
right.
informed about what we're talking about.
Yeah.
And then you have people who pay private pay, and you can afford to do that. If people are interested, the Loveland Foundation, I always really try to plug them and tell people about them. They will offer up to 12 sessions. They'll pay the therapist. I think they're at $120 a session. They'll pay up to $120 to the therapist for your sessions, so for up to 12 sessions. And they provide that for Black women and girls specifically. There are other
actually, I just had a client that was telling me about that about 2 years ago. So that was definitely also something too, that I've mentioned.
I use them
to
for my own
clients.
therapy.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
definitely plug your stuff in and use it to get access to therapy. There are also other organizations, nonprofits around the city who do it. Of course, you can use your insurance company. You can go to the big hospital systems. There are therapists who are there to support you and can help you, and they can do quality, good work. I don't want to make you assume that there's not great therapists who can do great work in those spaces. There absolutely are. But understand, it is an investment of time. It is an investment of energy. It is an investment of resources to really do the work. Okay, last thing I'll kind of say related
This
to
is good. This is good.
if you were going to do physical therapy, right, your knees
Come
really
on.
been bothering you, and you were
Come
going to do
on.
physical therapy, you have to do the exercises, right? You don't just go to physical therapy once a week and they have you do stuff, and then you go home and you sit on the couch and you don't move that knee again until your next appointment, and you assume that all of a sudden it's going to work again. You can sign up and do therapy.
It's right. You can do whatever you want to do, but I don't think the results you're gonna get are you
But
gonna
if
want
you
them.
want to see results, you're going to have to get ready to be
Yes.
uncomfortable.
Yes.
You're going to have to get ready to have some hard conversations. If you do not feel comfortable looking in the mirror, that's a great reason to do therapy, but get ready to learn how to do that. Because therapy really, truly is about looking in the mirror, understanding who you are, how you feel. Your friend, your partner, your whoever is upsetting you, getting on your nerves. Why?
Mm,
What is it stirring up in your spirit? What is it making you feel? What is it
yeah.
making you think? How do you want to like how can we process that for you? That's what this work is about. It's not going to be about like you go in there and you talk about how terrible your mom is and she was a terrible person that should have showed up for you, or your dad's a narcissist and all of that. Okay, yes, and what are you going to do with the fact that that's the mommy and daddy you were born to? So
Yep.
now what?
Yep. Yep.
Who will
Yeah.
you
I
be?
literally had a client tell me one time they wanted someone to tell them that they were right, and I told them, I'm not your therapist. It was nice talking with you, and if you find what you're looking for, hey, best of luck to you. But I'm not it, because and again, and it's also like breaking down the myth of what therapy is, and
Mhm.
especially in Black and Brown communities, because one of the things I talked about on my show some time ago is we have unfortunately bad history with doctors. We've been mistreated and abused and all the things. And so I understand that there's some reservation, because it's like, okay, what are you going to do? Like, what am I doing in this session? What do I need to talk about? Why do you need to know that information? um and knowing that if you don't know anybody in your circle that's been in therapy, it already feels like this
Mhm.
really big bad thing. But when it becomes normalized and you hear more people talking about it, especially that look like you, that say, hey, I went to therapy, or I'm going to therapy, and this is actually what it's done for me, and you can see the results in that person, then it's like, oh wow, they got some results. I know what they used to be like, and I know how they are now. So if that can work for them, maybe this can help me. And it's having those conversations in a very normal but conversational way, which is again is why we do therapy on the mic, because it gives people the opportunity to start contemplating, maybe I should go to therapy. Maybe it's not what maybe people told me I thought it was. Maybe it's not just for crazy people, right? The
Mhm.
things that we've probably all been told in our communities before, like, you got to be psycho to go to therapy, or like, oh no, you can actually be pretty normal and life could be pretty chill, but you're just going, like you said, like, you go for a checkup. I just want to
Mhm.
make sure I'm meeting the goals or the things that I want to accomplish, or maybe I'm sensing something. I'm trying to be proactive,
Mhm.
because I am in a space where I'm dealing with a lot of triggers, and
Yeah.
I want to be proactive about my emotional regulation, and I don't want to be in a position where I have to go to therapy. Like, I
Mhm.
want to do it.
You don't want to go to the grippy socks. Like we
No.
talk a lot before we get to grippy socks. So much. If you get to grippy socks, like you like, yeah. I mean, okay, let's understand this in the context of like healthcare, right?
Yes.
When we're talking about grippy socks, and I know we're joking, at that point we're talking about hospitalization
Mm-hmm.
separate from mental health. If you get to the point where, because of your blood pressure, because of your blood sugar, because of any other like function of your body, you have to be hospitalized, your kidney function, you have to be
Mm.
hospitalized. That means that we weren't taking care of ourselves before then. And
Mm-hmm.
there was likely lots of red signs that we should have been doing something before we got to hospitalization. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, because we have this cultural stigma where everyone thinks therapy and mental health is just for the crazy people, it's because it doesn't get used until people are full out in the crazy.
Right.
But we could do a lot more beforehand. Here's the reality: every single person on this planet has experienced trauma. We all lived through COVID 19.
Yeah.
How many of you have taken the time to sit with what you lost in that season?
Mm. Ask that question again. That's good.
How many people have sat with the reality of what they lost in 2020 when we had the
Mm.
COVID shutdown? How many people have taken the time to really sit and feel the realities of how their life has changed for good and for
Mm.
bad? What they hoped for, what they missed out on, grieving people even? How many of you have actually taken the time to do that work? So many of us, it's just like, I don't have time. I just got to get to the next thing. We just got to go, go, go. It's like a, I mean, it's not pretty words and language, but it's constipation.
Mm.
All of that just gets stored in your body.
Ooh.
All of that
Wow.
pain, all of that grief, it's your body experienced it. It's there.
Yeah.
It's holding in your body,
Yeah.
and that's why your blood pressure is high. And
Yes.
that's why we die from heart attacks at higher rates.
Yes.
And
And it's
that's
a
why your
silent killer.
patience is short. Yes.
It's a silent killer. And that like it was last year. Um and it's funny because I had Renata on here last week, but I'm thinking back to last year around this time. She was back on the show, but we were talking about PTSD and the correlation with Black women and what happens to our health, and really the silent killers. And a
Mhm.
lot of that is because things are piled on us, and a lot of times we take on uh, the service or the nurturing role, and we take on everybody's stuff, but we're the last to care about ourselves.
Mhm.
And then you see generations of Black women dying. And I literally just saw something on LinkedIn where uh, someone was saying that I guess a sponsor pulled out of supporting them for maternal Black health or something like that.
Mhm.
And they said it wasn't a part of their program or programming or whatever. And her response basically was like, this is not a trend.
Mhm.
Like maternal Black health has been a thing for a very long time. And even though people may not want to support it because it doesn't fit this overarching scope that's happening in our country right now, that doesn't mean that we're going to stop, making this a priority, because, our people are dying at high rates. And when we don't have the funding or the support, we have to do what we have to do to ensure that, people are being supported. But we can't, we have to have that healthy balance of, like we were saying before, about the self-care. Like we
Mhm.
have to, as practitioners, as those who are in any kind of service role, we have to have our own level of self-care, which is something that I'm constantly being reminded of for myself. And then I have
Mhm.
people around me that remind me, like, you need to sleep, or
Mhm.
you need to like go for a walk, which is something that I did yesterday because I realized that being out in nature, or just taking moments of having gratitude or journaling or writing poetry is, for me, that is a form of therapy for me. These are all things that help me process my trauma. But everybody has a different way that they process their
Mhm.
own, but it needs to be a priority.
Mhm. Absolutely, 100%. Walking is a bilateral stimulation, so that is part of EMDR. Like um, there's a soothing element to walking. So same with reading, going left to right across a page. These things are actually soothing to us on a neurological level. So engaging in those practices are important. My practice and who I see as clients is I see women, all women. Um, but especially Black women often. But one of the reasons I like to see women is because we often carry the emotional burden for not just ourselves, but for those around us, right? So if you, as a mom, if your kid, you forgot to send the money for the field trip or you didn't pack the lunch right and your kid is upset, often we carry the weight of their frustration with like our mistakes or what's not going right in their world, even when we're partnered intentionally and sometimes unintentionally and sometimes intentionally. We carry the emotional burdens and weight of the men in our lives a lot of times. They come to us and they tell us about how hard their workday was, what's not going right in their world, and they use us as a place to soothe and like, I'm so sorry that's happening. And we're expected to take it, feel it, process it, and give it back to you in soothing, calm, and affirming. We do that work for ourselves, for our friends, for our loved ones all the time. But the weight of that can get heavy over time, especially when we don't have our own practices and ways of getting that off of us at the end.
And I
So
loved how you say
walking,
getting it off.
getting it off,
Like
letting
that's
it
it.
go.
It sounds like a very intentional action. And what happens when
Absolutely.
we don't?
intentional, and we need to be intentional about it. You know, those who have like a spiritual practice, this is, add this to your prayer life, like let it go, like name it. These things that happened today, I turn them over, I give them away, and they are no longer mine. I don't care. I don't know I don't need to be responsible for them. But letting it go, taking it off of our plate, getting rid of it, um, that has to be part of our work. The other piece is sometimes saying no, saying like, "Hey, so I really want to hear about your day, but I had a hard one myself, so I'm not gonna be able to do that right now. I'm gonna
Mm,
for a little
that
bit."
was real slick. I like how you did that because it's acknowledging that you heard it, but that
Mhm.
doesn't mean that I'm going to engage with it.
No, because I don't have the capacity.
Boundaries.
And sometimes that's just the truth. I don't have it. Sometimes I
Yeah.
have to say to my kids, listen, I love you very much. I worked a long day today and I need a moment. Okay.
Yeah.
Don't talk to me for the next 15 minutes with
I
love.
love that. With
And
love.
with
With
love, I
love.
can't do it. I know I
Yes.
also have to give them the space. And sometimes my daughter's like, can I have a timeout? And I'm like, yep, got it. Go
That's
have your
because you modeled that.
Or sometimes I see them, I'm like, it looks like you need to have a little alone time. I'm gonna ask you to go to your room, take some breaths, and get yourself together, because you coming off real snappy, and I don't want to match you.
I love how you said it. And I don't want to match you. You don't want me to match you. Yeah.
Let's do this
And
for
you know,
both of
and
us.
it's
Let's go ahead.
and that's such a good thing that you said because here's one of the things that I find that's interesting. I've seen this in other people that express things to me in like therapy sessions. And then in my own life, it's if you are already at a 10, the person that you're talking to or having a situation with, if they're at a 10 and you come at it at a 10. Now, granted, maybe whatever they were at a 10 about had nothing to do with you, but you're in their space
Hmm.
and you don't want to get at a 10 and you're trying to express to them, hey, you know what? I I can't have this conversation right now, so I need to step away. And if they don't want you to step away, how do you respond in those moments? Because sometimes the temptation is, you know what? Since I've expressed to you, I cannot do this right now because I don't want to match you. I like how you said that. But if they still can't accept that, either you're going to match them and it's still not going to be constructive or helpful, or either you just are stuck. Like how do you handle that?
I will match you with my no. So my no is going to match your energy. I'm not doing this. They keep going. I walk away. I get out of the space. You're following me. You're like, it's a check. I've already said I'm not. Like now I'm going to, like, if this continues, then this is like the consequence. Like now we're on a different thing because I've asked you to leave me alone. And I was about to say it how I really would say it, but I done told you to leave me alone.
Right.
And now you're inviting me to have to engage with you as an adversary. You're asking me to like have a conflict with you, and I'm trying to not.
Right.
But like that's where it's the setting the boundaries, and where I can say Charlotte's not always nice. I can be mean. I'm choosing not to be.
Right.
I'm gonna give you another second. You need to walk away, because then I'm going to engage with you like a mean person, and I'm actively trying not to be there. But I think sometimes people think like if I learn to be nice and practice niceness, then people are going to take advantage of me. And like ain't nobody, you can be nice and nobody take advantage of you. You have to have
Facts.
clear boundaries. I can be nice,
Facts. I
nice,
love that.
nice, be very courteous to people. You snap off at me, you're a cashier somewhere and you got an attitude. Girl, ain't bring my stuff up and let's get it going. That don't bother me at all. Ain't none of my business. I can be a nice person. But if I'm only have to engage my meanness when someone's being like at me, confrontational to me. When you're calling me into a fight, well then now I got to be that. And
He said, I don't want
I done
to,
saved it up all day.
but you
I've
kind
been
of put
nice
your
all day.
foot.
I was storing them, so now you're gonna get the full force of all this. Please don't.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And that's actually something, even, I talk a lot about boundaries. Sometimes you can only be in control of yourself, which is the
Hmm.
thing at the end of the day when we look at especially people that we know trigger us. Um, knowing like, okay, if I know I need to be at my absolute best when I'm walking into a space, like it could be maybe you have family members or friends that you know are just really challenging, and it's like I didn't get a nap today. I'm probably not going to be a very good trooper if I walk into the space. So I'm going to not go, or I'm going to go, but I'm just going to kind of step back in this, way so that I could manage my own emotions and, my own expectations so I don't go in here and embarrass myself and you. But then the other piece is saying, like, okay, I will have this conversation, just not now. And then allowing people to respect that. And then sometimes that we have to evaluate, okay, if I'm telling someone I will, but just not now, but I'm engaging anyway, then I'm not even respecting my own boundaries, which
Mm-hmm.
then allows other people to cross mine. Does
Mm-hmm.
that
Mm-hmm.
make sense?
Yeah, because at that point, then I've told you that what I say, I don't actually mean, but I
Right.
mean what I say, and I say what I mean. So that is a part of my boundaries. You know, like if I say I don't want to have this conversation, but if you don't stop, da 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 da, well, I've just told you and communicated with you that I do want to have this conversation, right? Like some of it is just being honest with yourself and with your words and what you're saying. I'm not talking to you right now, and then I disengage, says I'm not talking to you right now. I'm
Right.
holding that boundary and that expectation and saying what
Yeah.
I actually
Yeah.
mean. Yeah.
That's good. That's good. Well, there's a couple people that I
Oh,
want to. Oh, go ahead.
real quickly, because you were mentioning like if I'm in a space and I am and I know I'm a hairpin, like I know
Yeah.
like it doesn't take much and I'm gonna pop off.
Yep.
I think part of that also is knowing and being honest with yourself that that's where I'm at. Like low key, I'm not all the way there. So I'm not going to engage with the things that I in a way that I would otherwise because I know me and I know I'm not really all the way there today. And I'm gonna take
Mm-hmm.
responsibility for that. And if somebody's like, "Dang, you snappy," my bad, because I am, and
Yeah.
maybe I need to go. I don't need to be like mad at you because you recognize that I'm snappy. I am.
Right. And
I am.
just say that yes, I am snappy. Versus
Yeah.
like I'm not snappy, but you snapping at people while you saying
Yeah.
it.
I am.
Right?
That's part of like learning to accept yourself as somebody who is both good and bad, who
Yes.
does nice and sometimes is mean. And I am all of
Yes.
those things, and I try to be strategic and
Oh, that's
considerate about how I am those things. But I'm all of the
yes.
above. So when you call me out and you say, Charlotte, what you did was kind of mean, I'm not like, no, I'm never mean. I'm like, oh, what did I do? Because sometimes, whoops, did I let something through? My bad. I'm sorry. That wasn't my intention. Or like, sorry about you. I did say something mean and I meant it. Whatever it is, I'm gonna own it because I'm both.
Yes. And I love that. I'm trying to think of the book right now. I had to read this, man, back when I was probably in my mid 20s, and I was actually getting some mentorship as well. And that's like really when I started doing more counseling, and I was more in the ministry realm, working with college students. But the book, I cannot think of it, and I'm gonna put it in the comments later for those that may want to read it. But the thing that you said that made me think of it is it's a section in the book, and it's called the good bad split, and it talks about how we, based off of how we grew up, we can struggle with believing that we have both.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you grew up in a household where you were kind of like, not trying to be funny or shade on anybody, but this is the best example I can think of, The Simpsons and like Ned
Mm-hmm.
Flanders,
Mm-hmm.
where it's just like, hey, nothing's wrong, Oakley
Uh-huh.
dokley, like we're
Yeah.
all good, and it's denial, denial, denial. And
Uh-huh.
then it's like the moment that if we have an argument, that means like something is horribly wrong with me,
Mm-hmm.
versus like, hey, no, this is actually something you should be upset about. Like, you
Mm-hmm.
should be able to express that I'm upset, I'm angry. You
Uh-huh.
should be able to communicate that.
Yep.
But if you come from a household growing up where you couldn't communicate it, then it feels like I'm struggling with being good, both good and bad, and
Mm-hmm.
knowing that they both exist. And then what do I do with that? And then the other piece in that book, it talks about grace plus truth over time is growth.
Mm-hmm.
And the grace is being able to know that we are not perfect and we are ever evolving and changing, But then the time, or grace plus truth, the truth is like, okay, these are areas that I need to change. Like if I'm trying to get to this goal in life, I can no longer be immature and respond in a really unhealthy, toxic way if I plan to, let's say, be a supervisor or a
Mm-hmm.
manager,
Mm-hmm.
right? I can't manage anybody if I
Mm-hmm.
can't manage myself.
Mm-hmm.
And then the time is I'm going to have these experiences that will test if I'm really ready for this goal that I want. And being able to have coping skills in between that help me to manage my expectations, my emotions, my behaviors, all those things, which there's a lot of different levels of different types of therapy or modalities, as you said, but being real to say, like, okay, am I willing to do the work?
Yeah. So two things with what you just shared. One, the other a family thing that can happen that can make it difficult for people to hold the tension of being both good and bad is if every time you made a mistake, it was attributed to you were a terrible person. So if the
Mm,
punishment in your household was you spilled the milk, you dummy, you idiot, you're a horrible
mm,
person, how dare you
yeah.
do that? Then the idea becomes for that child, for that person, if I make a mistake, if I'm not perfect, if I, do something wrong, it means that you think I'm a terrible human being. And there's no space there for like, oops,
Yeah.
my bad. So that's another just like example of where that shows up.
That's
And
good.
then the other piece you were talking about, sorry, it was another point. Oh,
Mhm.
like when you're looking at goals. So I just talked to somebody about this today. If I saw if a goal of mine, I saw myself in like the next year or 2 years, I want to be a bodybuilder. I want to walk across the stage and like do bodybuilding things. Then I would have to live today like someone who is going to eventually be a bodybuilder.
Mm.
So, one of the things I like to ask my clients is where do you see yourself in 6 months, a year, 5 years, 10 years? How are you building habits today that are going to
Mm.
support you in getting there? Because you're not just going to pop up in 5 or 10 years and be wherever it is you want to be. You're going to have to be
Like
intentional.
I'm just gonna like have a bunch of muscles, like wake up like, dang, where these come from?
It'll just happen. And maybe you're nowhere near where you're ready to work out. That's okay. But maybe that person takes their lunch to work every day. Maybe that person
Good
grows
first step.
vegetables. And you can start with building the habit of going to the grocery store.
Facts.
So whatever it is of where you want to see yourself, like I want to write a book one day. If that's your goal, are you keeping a journal? Do you practice writing? Are you reading on the regular? These are
Yes.
things that you could do now. That book might not be for another 20 years. That's fine, but you need to be building the skills and habits that are going to get you there. It's not going to just
Yes.
happen.
Yes.
But that
That's
requires you to
good.
believe. That requires you to believe that you're going to get there.
Right. And and it's funny that you said that. Do this real quick because I'm gonna grab my book. It's like literally right by me, and of course I'm like, why is it not right by me? But can you see the comments?
I can. I can.
Okay. And I think a couple of people had some questions, so I wanted to see if you could answer them or at least maybe respond to them. Because I think Carmen had said something. It's most definitely something that I've had. I think she meant therapists. That's
Hmm.
to tell me it's like to
It's something
me.
to work through. Like if you experience racism on your job, like, well, how can you change your mindset so that you're not experiencing that kind of racism? So one of
Yeah,
my
speak to that real
jobs,
quick. I'm
yeah,
keep
okay,
talking,
you're
keep
good.
talking.
Yep. So one of my jobs is that I do training for other therapists, often white therapists, to help them understand how toxic that kind of thinking is. Because a lot of times therapy is what thoughts do you have, what experiences do you have, and how can you kind of challenge them or find a different way forward. So I do trainings for therapists all the time, trying to get them to understand why that kind of stuff is toxic. You should, if you are looking for a therapist, you should ask them about their beliefs. You should not be afraid to ask them like how comfortable they feel with having a conversation about race, how comfortable they feel with having a conversation about sex. If you're queer, asking if they're comfortable with queerness. Because imagine, that is your life, that is who you are, and you have a therapist who's basically going to tell you that who you are is wrong. That's only going to cause further distress. So it is important to some extent. If you have a faith belief, I don't care if that's Christianity or, you are heavy into astrology. If those things really fuel and guide who you are and how you move, you don't necessarily need a therapist who has the same belief, but you need a therapist who's going to be comfortable and support you using those tools to guide you. And not every therapist is going to be comfortable with everything because we are our own individual people. So
That's good. And I'm glad that you said that because I've had people ask me about different types of therapy if I do them. And I'll be quick to tell you no, I don't. But I will refer you to someone
uh-huh,
who does.
uh-huh,
Um, and I think that's important from a therapist standpoint to be able to say, like, no, I can't. And again, boundaries to say, like,
hmm
no, I can't take this on. Or even if, like, it may not be something that you have done a lot of, but you know enough about empathy, you have
hmm
enough understanding that you're
hmm
willing to learn because, again, the therapist doesn't have to have the exact same background as you to be able to help you. Sometimes you need someone who is outside of the spaces that you've experienced because they can see it from a different
hmm
perspective that can actually open your mind to other ways to handle things in a healthier way.
hmm
Which is one of the reasons why, again, diversity is so
hmm
important because we shouldn't all think the same way. We'd be in a lot of trouble.
Yeah,
We are in some
100%.
trouble right now. But anyway, we should be thinking the same way.
Yep.
And I think that's a part of the healing part to that. And I wanted to speak to that. So there's a question, and I'm trying to think, a couple of people said some other things. The speaker box said, wow, that's the cost of having business. You said it earlier.
hmm
Let's see. Oh yeah, when I talked about I didn't get a nap in today. Sometimes we gotta be real. Like when we know like our limits. Like if we are tapped out, like I'm an extrovert, but when I get tapped out, like you should be like, yeah, something's really wrong. Cause I love people, but when I'm like, and my husband will say this a lot. He'll be like, sometimes you'll come home, you'll sit, and it'll take them about 5 seconds for you to be knocked out. He was like, you probably had warning signs all day, and you literally crashed. Your
hmm
body was like, we ain't waking up until we were ready.
Yep.
And sometimes we have to be honest about that too, like when we're not eating properly or if we're not getting enough rest. And that was actually, I think, one of the statistics that I shared earlier, which we go back to that real quick about how important it was. It said a study published in Psychology Today found that 90% of people who kept a gratitude journal reported greater focus, improved sleep, and reduced stress in just 2 weeks. Um, and I'm thinking, wow, if we can refocus or shift our thinking, right, instead of basically obsessing over
hmm
the area that we feel like we can't fix, but we want to change, or we feel like it's not changing, but we're either in denial or we're just not willing to accept where we are. Having gratitude allows us to be honest, but also to still have hope. And like, can you speak to that
Yeah.
part and how important hope is in the journey of therapy?
Yeah. So progress over perfection. Progress over perfection. That's really what we wanted to see. You do not have to have a perfect life. You do not have to have perfect experiences and engage with everyone perfectly. You need to be trying, growing, learning, and having evolution throughout your life. And in something like a gratitude journal, what it gives you the opportunity to do is to really slow down and reflect on how did you progress. Because sometimes our mind, we can get so obsessed with everything that didn't go perfect today, everything that's not going perfectly in my life, and we're not looking at like how we're progressing through life. It does not matter that you tripped in the third grade hallway when you were in second grade and the kids laughed. Like today, that only impacts your life as much as it impacts your life. You don't have to exist there. We can move from that moment. But if you choose to exist there, you choose to exist there.
I
And
love that.
so, like, that's what we use therapy for, is so that we can learn to let go of some of those things. 'Cause some of those things are more difficult than when you trip down the hallway, right? Some of them are more intensive, where you were maybe hurt and harmed or experienced some abuse, and you're still carrying that today. and it's impacting and shaping how you live today. And it's making it so that you're not realizing your coworker came by and gave you a compliment, or your children drew a picture for you at school, and you can't totally be there because you're still stuck on
Mm,
experiences and pains that have happened to other places. So slowing down and recognizing what is happening right now, real today,
yeah.
versus getting caught up in the big picture, it's helpful, because sometimes that big picture can just keep us really tight and tense.
Yeah, that's good. And I think that's one of the reasons why like last year for me was probably one of my most difficult years, but it was actually one of the best healing spaces that I've been in a long time because I had to grapple with a loss, but also with a sense of like understanding my value and understanding who I am, what I bring to the table, and not minimizing that because of how other people,
Mm.
may treat me or deal
Mhm.
with me. And it really, that's how this came about. And and it's called Gratitude is Always in Season, and it really does focus on, helping people to find gratitude, growth, and healing. And I broke it down into like three sections. The first is gratitude for self, gratitude for the relationships is the second, and then the last is gratitude for the journey.
Mm.
And it has poetry, my photography, and then also self-reflection questions in here and other resources. But like when I ask the question, and I want to ask you this as we're coming to the end, but what do you find for yourself, and then what do you find for your clients? Which of those three do you find it the most challenging, or at least maybe in this season? Because that's why I say gratitude is always in season, because every season is different. But in this season, for you personally, what do you find the most challenging to find gratitude in? Self, relationships, or the journey?
It is hard for me to find gratitude, and for my clients a lot of times gratitude. Oh, wait a minute. Just had a thought. Sorry. My first thought is it's hard to find gratitude in the journey. When you're on the journey, it's really hard to be appreciative of like everything is falling apart and nothing is together. And like that is part of healing.
Mm,
If I've been, a lot of times I'll draw on the board in my office for my clients. Like if the pattern is star, heart, star, heart, star, heart, and that's the pattern of my life. And I recognize I want to change that pattern, and I want it to be heart square, heart square. That means I have to actually change something. It means I have to deconstruct something. And
mm,
that process of getting rid of and believing that you can create a new pattern when you is chaotic and painful. And that part of the journey, it can be really hard to have gratitude for that moment. So, one of the things I like to recommend to people is once you have completed one of those cycles, if you can recognize and reflect on past journeys you've had, things you've overcome, things you've done, take the time to reflect on past journeys and give yourself credit for those. It will give you the fuel to know that even in this journey, I can, I will, there will be another side because I've done it before.
mm.
But as I was getting ready to say all that, then I also had my own brain was like, girl, now you know what I actually struggle with. But I'm also actively trying to practice as a
Yeah,
new skill is
yeah.
gratitude for the self. Like
Mm,
today in our conversation, I have, how we met was because I said to myself at the end of last year, I need a boundary. I can't keep doing everything. I
yeah.
can't keep growing more and more. I'm going to set the boundary. You guys have heard me say today, like, because I am a good therapist. I've been saying stuff like that. Do I believe it? Yes, but this is new for me. Talking
Mm,
about myself in ways where I'm not shying and making myself like quiet and consumable for other people, where like everyone's
mm.
going to like me, and like they're going to think that I'm arrogant if I say that I'm good. Having gratitude for myself, I've worked damn hard.
Come
I'm very
on.
smart. I'm very capable. And I'm
Come on.
done with making that small, because
Mm,
other people are going to be intimidated or have judgment about me believing, as Beyonce says, I'm that girl,
yeah,
because I am.
yeah. And say it with, and look, as Kevin Hart, say it with your chest.
With my whole chest.
Say it with
When
your
I
chest.
look in the mirror, I am actively affirming for myself and working on my own belief. that I 100% am that girl all the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that I can't stand to somebody next to somebody else who is also that girl. And together we shine extra bright because
That's right.
my greatness has nothing to do with anybody else. It's
That's
100% to do
right.
with me. And I want to affirm and encourage other people to stand in that light with me
Mm-hmm. 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 Because it can only shine brighter.
because it can
It can
only shine
only shine
brighter.
brighter. I mean, we live, and I'm glad that you said that because we do. We are living in some very dark times right now, and I think what we have to get away from, whether if it's man, woman, black, white, Asian, whatever, is we have to get away from thinking like there has to be one voice or one focus, right? Because there's so many things that are like I wake up and half the time I don't even want to listen to the news because I don't know what crazies is going to pop out. But at
Mhm.
the same time, I realize like I have control over my space, over where I live, over the spaces that I walk into, which is the reasons why I do therapy on the mic or why I do spoken word elevated because it's what God gave me to do, and wherever he's called me to go and whatever he's called me to do, I'm going to do it to the best of my ability in those
Mhm.
spaces for however long he calls me there.
Mhm.
And when he calls me elsewhere, I'm going to move on and my assignment will change. But it's sometimes in the, well, I have to do it this way, or I
Mhm.
envisioned it to be this way. And when it
Mhm.
doesn't happen that way, that we kind of start feeling like our souls are crushed. Like, I
Oh.
can't do this anymore. And I've been down that road. Like, there have been multiple times I don't even want to do therapy on the mic anymore because,
Mhm.
things don't go the way that I think or they should or whatever. But then when I hear people say, like, I was watching you, last month, and you were talking about this particular topic and it helped me in this way. And I'm like, okay, so I guess I should be grateful and just keep
Uh-huh.
going,
Yeah.
and but like you said, it's being able to acknowledge what you're good at, being able to also acknowledge that maybe this may not be a strength, doesn't mean that it won't ever be, but in the
Mhm.
bigger scheme of like, what am I trying to focus on now? Like, what are the things that I need to fully engage and be intentional in? And then what are things do I need to either delegate to somebody else who has a bigger strength in that area, or I just need to say no to and just be
Mhm.
okay with it.
Mhm. Mhm. 100%. All of that. And the other pieces, like sometimes people from the outside will even like critique or judge and be like, what you're doing isn't as good as this person or doesn't look like that. And like, I don't need to look or be or have or create something that looks like somebody else's to be amazing. It only needs to be whatever it is I choose it to be. And I
Yeah.
can sit in the gratitude of that moment and what I've created. And if no one watched or no one listened or no one read or no one consumed, I enjoyed it. I got dressed and I'm working from home and ain't nobody gonna see me, but I think I look cute.
All right.
And
And
that's enough
that was
for
enough
me to get
effort for
there
me for today.
because I can look cute even when I don't have an audience because I want to look cute.
Right. Right. Do it for the audience of one. That's the thing that I always try to say to
Absolutely.
myself all the time. Whether, especially if I do spoken word in front of an audience of 3 or 1,000, it's gonna be the same energy regardless. Because at the end of the day, I know that I wrote these things because I'm not the only one dealing with it, and a lot of
Mhm.
times that's a part of our conversation, even on therapy on the mic, is somebody else out there in the lovely technology world is dealing with the same thing. It may look different, it may be shaped different, but it's similar. And what that does is it also is a head nod or affirmation to say like, I'm not alone. And
Mhm.
that's a part of the healing journey, is understanding that in this crazy thing called life, we are not alone. And that's usually the first place when we're dealing with stress and anxiety that we go to in our minds is no one understands. And that's when we start creating isolation and walls, and we can just do ourselves a disservice. So part of that is checking in on ourselves, like, what am I hiding, or what am I like not willing to share with someone, especially if I know it's something I struggle with, and why do I feel ashamed to say this? um And then if I maybe not around the right people, maybe I need to find a new group of people. Maybe I need to find a therapist and I need to, release, like you said before, like let those things go. Because there's healing on the other side of whatever it is that we feel ashamed of or where we feel like we struggle or nobody understands. And there's also somebody else needs to hear it.
Okay. So often, I get somebody on this couch who sits here and says, nobody else is like me. Nobody else knows this struggle and this pain after they just tell me something. And I so badly want to tell them, I have another one at noon, one at 2, and one at 4. They all got the same stuff. Listen, if you talk about what you're going through, there are a lot more people than you realize who are dealing with the same stuff, but no one's talking about it. Talk
Yeah.
about it. Connect with people.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people going through it.
I love that. I love that. Well, how can people get in touch with you? Because I could just we could just talk forever, but I know you got a life and things to do.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
how can
Um,
people get in touch with you?
if they want to get in touch with me, my website is just charlayearwood.com.
And I'll put it
And
in the chat too, so people can find you.
awesome. And then there's a contact button on there. You can message me. I'm pretty like accessible. And then if you want to hear my musings on mental health and stuff like that, sometimes I post on LinkedIn and have start conversations over there.
Yay! Okay, well, this is like okay. I think this is my last question because like you
Mhm.
said so many great things. I was like, oh, oh, I want to ask you this. I want to ask you that. But this really was like I had like several questions, but I feel like we naturally had the. I said them all because that's just what this
Good.
is therapy on the mic. Um, what advice would you give to someone listening who feels mentally overwhelmed and unsure of where to start?
If you're able to acknowledge that you feel overwhelmed and you don't know where to start, you have already started because you've taken the step to be reflective and to recognize how you feel. So I would say start with pausing and giving yourself some gratitude and reflection for the fact that you are admitting to yourself that I have hurt, I have pain, I have sadness, and I want to do something about that. That is really, really powerful that you love yourself enough to want to be better versus just staying in. I have hurt, and so what? If you actually want to do something about it, first start with the gratitude to yourself that you actually care enough about yourself to want to do better. That's an act of love already. And then honestly, just start there. Okay, self, I want to love you better. How can I love you better? Yes, get a therapist. Therapists are helpful. Walk, get outside, eat healthier, connect with friends, build relationships. All of those things are helpful. But fall radically crazy in love with you. That fire can do so much. So just getting in the
I
habit and
love.
practice of like figuring out how you can fall in love with yourself. Stand in that mirror naked. Like
Yes.
the parts that you usually don't like.
Right.
Compliment them. It's
Right.
you. It's the only you got. And if the
Yep.
one voice your body and your mind has to hear the most is yours, and if that voice and that body is hearing a voice of you're not good enough, you need to fix yourself, you're ugly, look at you, why did you do that? Why are you subjecting yourself to that prison? It does not need to be like that. You can talk kindly to yourself. You can love yourself. And for a lot of us, that's going to take a habit and practice because it wasn't given to us. So
Yeah.
that's where I'd
That's
start.
good. That's so good. That's so good. Well, you already know that I'm gonna have you on the show again, so
Okay.
just
Oh,
be on the lookout. I may just
okay.
be calling you in occasionally, and be like, so we got this one topic that I think you'd be the perfect person to have this
Okay.
conversation about. But
Okay.
I do want to. I always share this at the end. I didn't get a chance to share. I always do uh, a mantra for at the beginning of our session, and then always like a call to action of some steps. These are not, and I always tell people this is not like 5 steps. 5 steps will fix your life. I'm not saying any of this stuff. What I'm saying is that kind of to that question, where do you start? Because if you're listening to this now or even on the replay, you may ask yourself, wow, there were a lot of things that were said that I really need to work on. But how about you just start with one? Just find something in this episode that you can just start one place and then just maybe even have some accountability and tell somebody else that this is where I'm starting and just make sure that their person is not a knacker, but somebody who's willing to check in with you periodically just to say how's it going. But a couple of things that I would say. The first is, what Charlotte mentioned, it is to identify, reflect on limiting thoughts or behaviors that are stealing your peace. Can't say that enough. Make sure that you are able to identify where they're coming from, and it might not even be from you. It could be something that is from your childhood that just keeps following you, and you got to identify it so you know how to deal with it and let it go. The second thing is start a gratitude practice. So write 3 things each day that you're thankful for. So I said at the very beginning of our session today, if you could think about the last 24 hours of your day, how many things did you how many things were you thankful for? Whether if it was you thank God, you thanked yourself, you thanked a friend, or whatever the case, or you just were like, I'm just thankful for the fall weather and going in the summertime. Like whatever it was that you were thankful for, just be thankful for and write it down. The third is seek support. So you got 2 therapists on the show today. So if you realize that, hey, look, I was looking for a Black therapist, you got 2 of them. Pick one, find somebody. And if we're not it, find somebody else. We know people. But seek support. Therapy, group healing, or community care spaces that are available and safe. Make sure that you find that. The fourth is set boundaries. I think we said that multiple times in different ways. Protect your energy and peace intentionally. That is so important. And the last is invest in you. Charlotte said it best. If you can't look at yourself in the mirror, and I think this is a really good exercise, get naked by yourself. Okay. So I'm gonna preface that. Get naked by yourself. So don't nobody be trying to take this clip like she said get naked. No, I said get naked by yourself. And look at yourself. And this is the rawest version of you that no one else knows better than yourself. And then find out what areas do you struggle with the most. Write some things down. So then that way this is maybe a starting point of what I want to grow in and be thankful for about myself, about my body, about my thoughts. And then seek how you want to invest in you to ensure that you get better at those areas that maybe you're not exactly grateful for, but I want to grow in. So if it's I want to lose weight, we getting into summer season, so I want to be able to wear a bathing suit, or I want to be able to hang around friends or family more often. We got family reunions coming around, and I'm an introvert, and I got to prepare myself for being around people, whatever. But make sure that you take the time to set some goals for yourself and what you want and work towards those. And if you haven't, join the Inspired Tribe. As I mentioned before, this is a free resource for you to listen to at any time. But of course, we do workshops. We have speakers. I also have, group therapy sessions, individual therapy sessions, virtual and in person. But, make sure that you take some time to just be inspired. Grab a journal. If you haven't, get your journal. Gratitude is always in season. It's a great way to be able to start off your gratitude journal. And then just get with some people that will help you grow. I can't say that enough. This journey is so, I won't say complicated. It can be. But when you have the right people in your corner, they can help you uncomplicate things. But you got to have the right people in your corner. So I hope that we're a part of your corner. And hopefully we're inspiring you with purpose today. Charla, I can't thank you enough. I hope that you can come out to, we're going to do Spoken Word Elevated. I forgot to mention that too. Do you like poetry?
Yeah.
Do you write poetry?
No.
Okay.
I don't. You said extrovert earlier. I'm an introvert. I don't really.
Yeah, the fact that you changed room, you're like, yeah, no. Well, I want to invite you to Spoken Word Elevated. We used to do it every month. It's a poetry event. It's more than that, but it's about elevating art, culture, and therapy. And so this month celebrates our 4-year anniversary of doing it. But we now do it quarterly instead of monthly because, like you, I was like, we gotta reevaluate. We can't do it all. Yeah. But grateful that the Idle Jorg wants us to do Spoken Word Elevated there. So it'll be July 12th. and it'll be a great celebration of all of those things: art, culture, therapy, and a way for people to connect in community, and safe spaces for people to get on the mic, share poetry, share something that they're grateful for, and also vendor shopping and all that good stuff. So if you want to come out, come out. And I want to invite anybody else that wants to come. I'll put that link as well in the chat later. But here's my mantra. I didn't write it down, but I think this is what summarizes what I feel like we talked about today. Love you, because when you love you, you will, no, scratch that. When you learn how to love you properly, you'll know how to love others the same. That's my mantra.
You can't love nobody else until you love yourself
Properly.
properly. Because what I got to pull from,
Come on now.
I don't know love.
Are you sure you sure you're not a poet and you don't know it? Oh, goodness gracious. Okay, until we meet again, we will have more information, and trustably, we already talked. Because I definitely, whatever you need me to help with or be a part of this amazing thing that you're doing, holla at me. I'm here to serve.
Gotcha. I'll be calling you.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Bye, Charlotte. Thank y'all. Bye.